Hello, it is the day after the election. And first and foremost, because I already know I'm going to be getting trolled, I was wrong. I thought Kamala was going to win, and she didn't. So we're going to talk about it. There are a variety of reasons why Donald Trump pulled this out. And we're going to start with the low hanging fruit, and then we're going to get into a bit more of the details in terms of what the Democratic Party could have done differently, not just in this campaign, but over the course of probably the last decade or so or more, maybe 2 decades. But first and foremost, we're gonna start with the very, very obvious reason of why Donald Trump was able to win. And the lowest hanging fruit is because this is a very racist, sexist, homophobic, and transphobic and stupid country. Yes, that's a very easy one, and that's why I'm putting it first. A la white people are still white people, and America is still America, and that is the truth. We're going to get into the more strategic details about what Democrats could have done, but first, we got to put the obvious out there because at the end of the day, Donald Trump ran one of the worst campaigns anyone has ever seen from start to finish, especially when Joe Biden dropped out. It was about nothing but racism, nothing at all. This dude was on the debate stage with Kamala talking about people's dogs and cats are being eaten by Haitians. Puerto Rico's a floating island of garbage. JD Vance and Trump doubling, tripling down on the Haitians eating people's pets. Everything about his economic plans, tariffs and mass deportation. Racism, racism, racism. The reason why people voted for it is because they like it and that's what they want. You know what I mean? Despite the fact that Donald Trump got his ass kicked at the debate by Kamala Harris, despite the fact that he's in mental decline, obvious mental decline, doesn't know what the hell is going on, people still came out in droves to vote for this man because this is a very racist and stupid country. Now, let's get into actually before we get into again, we're going to talk about what the Democratic Party could have done differently because that's perhaps more important because even though this is a racist, sexist country, that doesn't mean that Donald Trump had to win this election. So we need to be real and talk about those details. But first, we're gonna get into this, right? Like I said, white people are still white people, and that is why Donald Trump won, despite the fact that he put 3 Supreme Court justices on the bench who voted to overturn Roe v. Wade, despite the fact that he's almost certain to sign an abortion ban, a national abortion ban, if it hits his desk. White women still voted for this dude, because again, racism and sexism, obviously. Now, let's get into how white women doomed Kamala Harris and the Democrats. Again, we're going to get into these numbers, and then we're going to get into, again, what the Democrats should have done differently. So we're going to read this. Donald Trump has won the majority of white women voters for the 3rd time straight, even after destroying abortion rights, after a judge went painstaking lengths to clarify that Trump raped E. Jean Carroll, and even as the Harris campaign targeted the imaginary silent majority of women, hiding their political views from their husbands. 52% of white American women showed us who they are, Trump supporters. Now let's get into the exit polls. National exit polls showed that Trump easily carried white women's vote as white men two were 59% for Trump. For comparison, black men and women went 20% and 7% to Trump respectively, which was a bigger gain. But obviously that vote isn't what did it. It was the white vote. There was so much liberal hand wringing over Harris's perceived issues of black male voters. Black men were too sexist, too uneducated, and were as a real vulnerability for her chances. This election has taught me that there is a true intellect deficiency among our heterosexual black men. This is sad reality. One viral tweet on X-Red. Don't know who said that. Whatever. I don't know who said that because it doesn't say. And yet Harris won 3/4 of black men, while a much more powerful group of voters, white women, rejected the party, begging for their votes for the 3rd time in a row. The Harris campaign tried with good reason. All right, let's get into some more of these numbers. And yet, that was not a winning message for white women. A recent Times Siena poll showed that the majority of white women, like their white male counterparts, saw inflation in the economy as their top voting issue. Again, BS, complete BS. Maybe that's what they say, but if it wasn't for the racism and the sexism, wouldn't have went that way because inflation is down. It is. The economy is, we have the best economy on the planet. That doesn't mean that people are making enough money. That doesn't mean people have savings, but surely tariffs on everything and mass deportations is not going to improve the economy. Elon Musk said, he came out and said, yeah, Trump's going to crash the economy, but it's necessary for people to go through temporary hardships, aka fuck y'all, I want more money for myself. Plus, all of these economists saying that Trump's going to crash the economy with his plan. So BS, call it what it is. Racism is still alive and well. And again, after this, we're going to get into what Democrats should have done differently. Let's see. Abortion was second and immigration was third. To be sure, there is a notable age split here. Gen Z women only went 36% for Trump. That's a shame. Women aged 30 to 44 went 41% for Trump. Women aged 45 to 64 went 48% for Trump. And women over 65 backed the former president 45%. So again, it's real. It's real. It's not a fib. America's still America, and white people are still white people. Now, let's get into some of the issues that the Democrats have had for quite some time. One of them is messaging. Okay. The Democratic Party has struggled with having a succinct, clear message that sticks with people, not just in terms of campaign, but also Democratic accomplishments. When Democrats accomplish things like lowering prescription drug prices or expanding Medicaid or Medicare, they don't talk about it. They keep it on the hush. So much of the focus is on Trump and democracy, which is very important, but not as big of a focus on things like rent prices. No matter where you go in the country, rent is too damn high. That's not on the forefront of things. Kamala Harris did have a plan to expand Medicare for in-home care for the elderly, but that really was on the back burner for the for pro-democracy. Rather, again, that's not to say that pro-democracy is not important, but clearly Americans don't really care about that. Even though a lot of the exit polls showed that they do, clearly they don't, because again, all these white people and bigger portions of black men and Latinos voted for this man who tried to overthrow the country, who led an insurrection. So, at the end of the day, that's just not that important to people. Clearly, it's not. So, messaging is something that the Democrats have had an issue with for quite some time, and it's something that they're going to need to fix going forward, because it's not true that Democrats get nothing done. It's just a perception of that. Like Republicans have been able to sell the lie that the economy performs better under them, but it doesn't. It hasn't my whole entire life. Republicans get in, mess everything up. Democrats come in, clean everything up. The stock market always performs better under Democrats, but Democrats have not been able to successfully deliver that message to the public because people don't believe that. So that is an issue that Democrats need to fix. It's very fixable, but it's something that needs to be done, because again, this isn't just about presidential races, it's also about down ballot. And Democrats just did not perform well yesterday at all, because obviously we got all the factors we talked about before, but too many people believe that this man who's about to crash the economy and destroy it is going to save it. So clearly that's an issue. Also, obviously, running to the right does not work well. You know what I mean? Having Liz Cheney around, that may look good. That may look a little good, again, for the pro-democracy message, but clearly Americans just don't really care about that much. I mean, clearly they don't. So it's another issue, or another scenario rather, of running to the right not really causing that many Republicans to vote for you in the end. Because at the end of the day, Kamala is still black, and she's still a woman. She's still South Asian. She's still all of those things that Republicans overall really don't want to vote for. So that is another issue. Then we got perhaps Biden should have stepped down earlier. Kamala Harris, she only has 70 days to do this. In my opinion, she ran a fantastic campaign. She did about as good as she possibly could have done with what she had. She raised a ton of money. She was doing a ton of events. Her the get out the vote effort didn't pay off, but she tried. She put in a strong effort. In my opinion, she ran a very good campaign. But again, it just maybe she needed a little more time. So maybe if Biden would have stepped down sooner, perhaps that could have helped. But we'll never know. So I think that's a smaller thing. That's definitely smaller than messaging and running to the right, because we can't really prove that. We'll never really know. But perhaps that is something that could have made a difference. Another thing is clearly, um, this kind of goes back to messaging, but more of a focus on progressive policies. Talk more, but don't just talk about expanding the Affordable Care Act. Let's talk about a public option. Let's talk about single payer health care. Let's talk about things like that. Let's talk about, expanding or making college tuition cheaper. Let's talk about things like that, eliminating debt. Let's not be afraid to touch those issues because clearly they're popular. And, oftentimes Democrats, they try to balance things out and run to the middle, which clearly it's just not working that well because we live in a populist time. That's the era we live in. So Democrats have to get better at tapping into the fact that we are in a populist era. Another thing that I really, really need to point out is that um who do the real onus and the real blame at the end of the day for elections is always on the public. You know, I just got done listing some things, some very practical things that Democrats, not just in this election, have struggled with, but my whole life have struggled with. But at the end of the day, the public, the people, we're the ones who hire these motherfuckers, right? We're the ones who vote or don't vote. We're the ones who run for office or don't run for office. And since I've been involved in politics, one of the most important things I've learned is that it's my responsibility to make the world around me a better place, whether that means I'm spreading more kindness, love, and empathy and understanding. Taking time out of my day to help people feel better, to help people succeed in their endeavors and their goals, or being involved in politics like I am, trying to help educate people as my brand continues to grow, getting more involved in initiatives. That's what all of us need to do. If you think you would be a good candidate, or someone who might be, then we need to get more involved because at the end of the day, it's really not that useful to always be like, well, the Democrats should have done this and that and this. What about you? What about me? What about us? What can we do differently? Like we can't just expect what we want to happen just because we think it should, because that's not the way the world works. So at the end of the day, I really always prefer to point the finger back at me, back at the man in the mirror. What did I do everything? What more can I do? How can I do things differently and better? And I think that that's one of the areas where Americans fall short consistently because it's not just national elections, it's not presidential elections, but we got city councils in our backyards that a lot of people don't know anything about. We got all the, we elect people in our municipalities that a lot of people don't know anything about, mayors, governor, gubernatorial races, all of these things that people just don't pay that much attention to, especially when you go down and down in younger generations. Because, I'm a millennial, I'm 32 years old, but my generation and down, this is how we experience much of our life. We're looking at a computer screen. Search engines and algorithms don't show you the truth necessarily, they show you what you want to see. So if you like and you want to see a whole bunch of conspiracy theories or a whole bunch of BS, then search engines is going to feed you that because that's what keeps you on their platforms, right? So we need to do a better job taking responsibility, but also our education system has greatly failed us. It just has. There's no reason why millions and millions of people, millions of Americans should be completely clueless about how the government works. That is a direct result of our education system failing its people. And another thing I want to point out, and this may make, I'm a progressive. Y'all know I'm a progressive, but sometimes progressives really get on my nerves because, other than Bernie Sanders, and he couldn't win the primaries in 2016 despite how popular he was. He couldn't win the primaries in 2020 despite how popular he was. But other than Bernie Sanders, what other progressives, at least in this era, have gotten more than a few percentage points in a primary? I mean, we can't get people to vote for us. So, like, after Democrats lose, I just find it annoying when progressives act like, oh, this is what they should have done. They should have done this and that and this and that and this and that. But we can't even get past the primary. So I think that progressives need to get a bit more real. I think we need to get real with ourselves, and realize that, in fact, a lot of what we push, a lot of what we harp on isn't necessarily popular with the public. Like it isn't all this online back and forth that we do. It hasn't proven to be productive. And we need to get back to focusing on policy. Not that progressives haven't been, but we got to do a better job organizing, and we got to stop pretending like we know all the answers when we can't even win primaries. So if we want to do better than this, then we're going to have to be better than this. And again, my biggest mistake in my assessment of this election was I feel that I greatly overestimated the intelligence of this country. There's a bunch of stupid motherfuckers in this country. And again, I just listed out a whole plot of things that Democrats could have and should have done better, could have and should have done differently. But at the end of the day, you know, Donald Trump got reelected because this is an incredibly uninformed and profoundly stupid country. And that's the truth. So if we want to do better again, we have to be better. Hey now, thank you so much for tuning in here at Politics and Paper. If you like what I do and you support my work, go ahead and subscribe. I greatly appreciate it and really helps to support what we do here.